Welcome back to Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. I'm Juliette Hahn here with my co-host, Brent Sopel. How are you?
Better question is, how are you?
I'm all right. I mean, are we going to talk about the 504? Is that why you're asking?
Oh, like yeah. That? What's the update on that? What's the update on that one? There's this last week on my side has been. Well, your side's a whole like. What you and your family just did,
we can touch on that because dyslexia did come up and it was actually very interesting. Actually, it will be very, and I know my dad would be okay talking about it, and you're going to be fascinated. You're going to be like, "What?" You're actually, this is great, but okay, look at you're like, this is great because it's not talking about me.
No, my again. I think Elizabeth and I, our week was insane, but it was the shit that, came up. Obviously, the event, at Thursday night, John and Tracy's, we had, there's like 25 people, neighbors and friends coming there to obviously meet Elizabeth and I, but we were supposed to watch a hockey game. And, we talked, ended up being all about the foundation all night long. So we were there for 6-7 hours, and how exhausting it is, putting on there. And Elizabeth's, a trooper, not knowing anybody. She's so amazing when it comes to that. Puts a smiley face on, and
so good.
Yeah, when it comes to those things, it's so hard for anybody to walk in, especially when you're not used to it. So, she's a rock star at that. But out of those, and John and Tracy, I don't know how long they've lived in the house they lived in, and it's a small community around a lake, and I think there's 22 homes around there, and there's like another 12 there. So you're talking less than 50 homes in this area, and they've been there for a little while. And I think that night there was 6 people that are either dyslexic or their kid is dyslexic. And John, right next door neighbor, guys, I believe a CEO of a company, and his kid's dyslexic, and now I think the kid's an investment banker. So early 20s, doing great. They got him tested early. He's like, thank goodness we had the means. But by the end of the night, I'm like, dude, you're dyslexic. And Elizabeth called me over because it's so funny when we first met. And started dating and bringing her into these things. She was just kind of sit back and listen. And, sharing an office, she's picked up she knows the questions to ask now. Oh, where did it come from? And she kind of perks up now. Where did it go? Where did it go? And she calls me on knowing 100% he's dyslexic now, because she always asks, she's heard me ask a million questions. Now she knows how to ask. And by the end of the night, I said, most of us dyslexics can't tie our shoes. His face went whoop. It hit the ground, and he gives the old foot lift. Look at my shoe. It was slip-ons. And the moral, and that's what I think a lot of this thing will be today, is John and Tracy. Obviously, John's helping out a lot. With the foundation, and they've been neighbors for, I don't know how many years, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, but had no idea his kid was dyslexic. And they live next door, right? It's just, the kid's doing a great job. The kid's doing great. The dad's like, thank goodness that we had, the means. Obviously, we talk about that, the financial means here, just about every day on this podcast. But he's now gray, his son's 20, mid-20s. So, I'm guessing he's, 55, maybe a little bit older, had zero clue about dyslexia. I shouldn't say that. Zero clue that it's hereditary. Zero clue. I talked about lefts and rights, and he told me, really? He goes, when I played football in high school, he goes, he I don't know what position he was. Sometimes he was a blocker. Sometimes he's like, all the time I get in shit because I'd go the wrong way. So finally the coach put an L on his left hand, right? So this is going back to high school. So, we're talking, I don't know, 60s, 70s, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's how far back didn't know his left and right. And then when I said, a lot of us don't know how to tie our shoes, he went, excuse me? Then he told me the football stories. I'm like, you're 100% dyslexic.
Right.
So I don't know if I made a friend or I made an enemy by the end of the night. And then, there's another gentleman. He just found out a couple of years ago. I think he's 65. So he found out in early 60s. And it was the coolest thing. Him and his wife relationship changed when she, again, because we talk about this just about every day. The other person who doesn't have it doesn't understand it. Once she had the more of the understanding, and I think he used the compassion, so he's like, that's when our whole relationship changed, because it wasn't, things that we talk about here and things that it's very different when you don't have it. So he goes, our relationship changed when she had more understanding. And I don't know how they found out. I don't know how. It's how many million times I go and Elizabeth, hey, does this make sense? Does this, and that his, she's ADHD, but he's 65, and so that was Thursday night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Thursday night.
Yeah, because that was Elizabeth's birthday, the 24th. Yeah. And I got a note from John stating that he was like, I didn't know. I thought it was going to go hockey. He's like, and it was, and I'm going to summarize what he said or how I interpret it. So this is not exactly the words.
Preface.
But he was,
is that a word?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. No, totally. He said, I was blown away. Like, Brent is so good at that. That's what he needs to do. And I was like, right. He's like, but the connections he made with people and I was like, right. He's an incredible connector. He goes, but he changed lives. He's like, I watched it. He was so like, he's like, I watched it happen. And it was really, really amazing. He's like, it wasn't one or two people. He's like, he changed a bunch of people's lives that day. And that's all they wanted to talk about.
Oh, first off, John was so pissed. He was like, because he wanted to, the video, that cool video that was put together. He wanted to put it up on the TV. He's like, I did it twice today to make sure it worked. Sure enough, when he goes to play, couldn't do it. Right. Yep. So the game started. I talked about one play, one goal, and I don't think I really even looked at the TV.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, so amazing. She sets people up. She asks these questions, and she, pushes them. Oh, you need to go talk to Brad. Brad, come on, you need to,
yeah, you guys are a good team.
But we didn't talk about hockey the whole night. Not once. It was supposed to be, obviously, the event was how you see how obviously myself, the hockey player. How do I see the game? That's how it. And literally nobody.
But and again, we talk about this, and this is why I got chills when John said that. I was like, oh, because I always say to you, yes, hockey. I mean, you always say it too, but hockey was what brought you to be able to have the platform to be able to then reach people, because this is what you're meant to do. Hockey was just a leverage for your next stage of your life. And this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be changing the landscape of dyslexia. You're supposed to be connecting with people. And that's exactly what we're doing. But anytime hockey comes in, it's really interesting because God, universe, I'm going to go unicorn here.
Oh, Miss Unicorn.
But it's been slamming you in the face of like, okay, that is not the world I'm supposed to be in. And you're aware of it now. And it's like, it's cool when those things happen, from behind the scenes and seeing it. Cause I giggle. I'm like, great. I know this.
Yesterday was even more mind blowing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Tell us about that.
So we're at an event. this massive bar for a young gentleman. He's got ALS, so was there signing autographs and stuff, and this place is crazy big on the south side of Chicago. Obviously, I don't really know south side. We didn't know we got to use GPS to get there. I had no idea Elizabeth had been there. This place is huge. We're sitting at the table with Jay, John's son, but who got the Stanley Cup putter.
Right.
His wife, his mom came. All these people are sitting there, and this lady, at the table, starts off with, "I'm looking at your shirt," and she says, "You know anything about dyslexia?" I said, "Yeah, that's my foundation." She is now assistant principal at a middle school in I think Frankfort, Illinois, which is 40 miles outside of Chicago, and that's where Drew, the military, that's the town he lives in. She goes, "I can't believe this," because she goes, "My teachers were just asking last week if we could find somebody trained in dyslexia, because we're getting an influx of dyslexic students and we have zero clue what to do with them." So,
speaking to the right person.
I'm like, hey, yeah. But it was, again, it was, that Fire Buddies event this year. She was there, never spoke to her, but just coming off the heels of, because I wore my t-shirt, she goes, they just asked, literally just asked, would you be willing to come? So I texted her this morning and said, here's the foundation website. Let me know what your schedule is. And, we can get on a call and talk more. But, so obviously he was kind of going in the spiel of dyslexia, and she's like, yeah, no clue. Later on, two other women and their husbands came over for autographs. So, there's another Blackhawk, Andrew Shaw. He's signing autographs and at a table, and people are like, why aren't you sitting at the table? I'm like, I don't follow rules. So I was standing up and people coming autographs and taking pictures. And these two ladies started asking questions. One's got her master's degree in reading, and the other one, they're late 50s, early 60s. It'd be by my guess. And the other one works for CPS, Chicago Public Schools, which that teacher union is a fucking crime. That leader, Stacey Davis, is a scumbag. Oh, did that come out of my mouth? Yeah, piece of shit. So I can't remember what the other lady does. She's like, I've got a dyslexic kid that I'm working with right now for sure. And I was talking about lefts from rights. I was talking about visuals. I was talking about self-esteem. And this lady, she's like, I've got a master's degree in, reading. No. She goes, I have zero clue about dyslexia. It didn't touch about dyslexia at all. I'm like, she goes, no. So I end up obviously started talking, the way I start talking, and the other lady's like, oh my God, I got a kid right now. We can't figure out. They just, said, don't worry about him. Just leave him, let him go. And I talk about all these things. I'm like, you've heard me use the same reference. Sam drove 10 miles. I'm like, I don't fucking care what Sam is. Show me where Sam is. I said, and I talked about self-esteem and, all these things that we struggle with. And the one lady's like, well, tell me what you see. Never heard of dysgraphia. Never heard of dyscalculia. And these, getting it, and it's not their fault, right?
Right.
It's not their fault. They've never been taught. So they started asking me questions about the foundation. What am I trying to do? And then I got into, I'm like one of the only foundations in the world ran by a dyslexic. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, everybody else is by non-dyslexic. I said, that's why the school system is broken. And I talked about, how I have to print everything. And then, so if the dyslexic who can't read off the screen or cell phone, I said, just think of COVID for 2 years. Their face is just fucking boom, dropped. And they're like, this is insane. Like, we don't know any of this. And I'm like, yeah, I said, I'm talking to neuropsychs right now. We're closer to 1 in 4 we're finding, not 1 in 5 anymore. And then they were asking about levels, so I always kind of related to, dyslexia, like, stage 1 cancer or stage 4, stage 4, most, severe dyslexic won't read. They go, what is it? They had no idea.
And they're in the education system. And
education. She's got her master's degree in fucking reading.
Yeah.
Again, it's not their fault.
No, you're interested, you go and you expect that you're taught what.
Yeah. And, and you expect like you're doing, doing everything you're supposed to be doing. And you learn everything. You got your master's degree because you obviously passed everything you're supposed to do, and they don't teach you shit. And this other, like, they're both their faces just the whole time. Then the one lady came back to Elizabeth, sorry, monopolized. She's like, no, I'm not. You're not here. This is what he's here to do, to talk. But it was crazy. Obviously, we had a lot of events, but if the whole purpose of my blabbing probably for 16 minutes and 25 seconds.
I love it.
I was in with people that, first, I've never talked to, John has been neighbors with the guy for a number of years, had no idea that his kid is dyslexic. At an event, the principal's just asking, she's like, I just had teachers come up and ask me, I need help in the, is there anybody? And, the other lady who works for Chicago Public, she's like, well, maybe we do seminars at the beginning of the year, and like, do you come talk to schools? I'm like, yeah, most schools don't want me there. They're like, what? Why wouldn't they want you there? I'm like, yeah, because, then I expose them of what isn't there.
What they're not doing.
Right. And she's like, what's the ultimate goal? And start going through this. But I'm like, I got to break down bureaucracy, because they all think that they've got their master's degree. They're the scientists. They're the smartest. I said, they're the biggest fucking scumbags in the world. I said, that's why I got to break down. And she goes, and obviously Chicago Public Schools, with that teachers union is one of the most corrupt unions, obviously in the world. They don't care about the kids. They care about their bank accounts. So I said, I'm fighting an uphill battle alone. I said, because all the other dyslexics or, foundations, are advocating for their reading program, but they're not dyslexic. Just the amount of faces that I needed to pick up off the floor, or I should say faces, jaws, right. When I said the numbers that I said, and the teachers there, the older ladies are like, yeah, autism, right? They know the spectrums. They know what it is. I'm like, I said, that's 1 in 36 right now, and not hereditary. We're between 1 in 4 to 1 in 5. I said, just think of all those classrooms, and the famous line, they all just think they're flipping their B's and D's. She's like, oh, it's just, tell me what's that other one? Dyscalculia? What's that? What? I've never heard of that.
Because they don't know what to do with it. That's why they don't teach it. Because it's like, yeah, it is. But that just brings me back to what you're meant to do, right? Like, the fact that you had the watch party for hockey, and then all of the influx this week of like showing you more, this is what, and then seeing you light up, right? Like, you're like, oh, feels so good to be able to sit and talk and educate and share my experiences, but also share the experiences of others dyslexics that don't get a chance to talk about, be the voice for the dyslexic community. I mean, that's what you're meant to do.
Yeah, I know it's, I would say, Elizabeth's the rock star that's got to sit there, and, deflect at people and take pictures. And she's like, that's what I'm here for. Can you take a picture of us? Can you take a picture? Can you send us? She's got the Sharpies in her purse, and we left for a few minutes everybody's drinking, right? We went next door to I think it was the Dollar Tree store, and bought some chocolates, those Reese's. So rolling back in with like 7 Reese's in her purse. And, it's just, was a lot. Those events are a lot for us, for me. You know, I got to put a lot of effort. And it sounds bad. It's the energy. Like it's, obviously you get into purpose and passion of talking to people. And there's a lot of addiction conversation, at this event. And there's a lot of ungrateful people that were there. I was pretty insulted and hurt, but how many people that are in the hockey community that were there were just, so
it's not where you're supposed to be. Right.
100%. I know that I know that too, that for a fact. That's, hi, I'm puffing your chest. Like, dude, I'll bury you in with your chest puffed out. So it was a lot, but it was just crazy that you have people with master's degrees. We talk about this all the time. How many people look like we have 10 heads
that don't know what they're doing. I mean, heads of schools of education don't know certain things, and it's so broken. And that's like, I'm not going to get into the politics of the Department of Education, but yes, does it seem scary, but has it been working? No. So is it going to get worse before it gets better? That's how everything works. It has to get really bad before it gets better. And it has been a shit show. It is not good. It is it's been bad. And how people think that it hasn't, it's the people that don't understand the underlying things. I mean, so that, I love that came into your life this week. I mean, it always does, but the fact that it was so thrown in your face this week is kind of beautiful. I mean, it is. And one of the things I do want the listeners to hear, because I know there's a lot of times where someone will say, well, I'm dyslexic, but I can tie my shoes, right? Again, there's spectrums of things. A lot of dyslexics can't, they struggle. And it's interesting. But then it's the same with the left and rights. Some dyslexics have the issue with the left and rights. Some don't. You don't have the left and rights. I have the left and rights. The shoes, Montgomery doesn't have the left and rights. He didn't have the shoes either, but he was a psycho learning to tie.
And I say a lot of things, and I think someone, let's say if you're a regular listener, I say the outlandish slings, right, to get people's attention, right? So when I say that, you're right. There's a certain percentage of us that don't have a problem with it, right? I make them stop. Those statements make people stop. What do you mean?
But it's a true statement though, and people don't think of that. They don't think a 50-year-old woman doesn't know her left and rights, even though I wear my wedding ring, even if I have something that's my Oura ring's on my right, but I have to stop and process and think. And it is every time someone says left and right, I have to stop and I have to get my brain correct and I have to do the L. I used to have to go J-U-L and make the L in my name because I was I don't know what side, is this the L or is this the L? Because I flip, but that's because I flip. So you don't flip. And so that's, again, it's the really interesting thing, the way the brain works. And that's why when the scientists are well, we know what you need, because you don't, because there's so many different things and there's so many different learning for dyslexic people that and everyone, people that are not dyslexic, but as we talk about every time, if you have dyslexia, there's a chance that you have ADHD, dyscalculia and dysgraphia. And if they're all combination, you're going to learn in a very different way than a typical also dyslexic. So you need to know all of it to be able to string the pieces together. And is it a lot of work? Fuck, it's a lot of work. Yes, it's a lot of work.
Try living it.
Exactly. I mean, but it's so interesting because we were just talking about that. Would you have anything else to add? Because
go ahead. I said to these teachers, they knew none of this. They're hold on, man. There's a lot to everything.
100%.
No, what it is, but they're well, what about testing? And they knew nothing about the neuropsychs. They knew nothing about how long it takes, the financial cost of it. I'm but even if we get somebody tested right now, you guys are the prime example. You don't even know what step 2. So what good is step 1 right now? If we can't even do step 2, they're wow.
Right. You're bringing a lot of good points.
And why am I wowing somebody in 2025 about this? It's fucking insane.
It's insane. Word blindness. 1800s. We knew about dyslexia. I mean, and that's the thing. So this weekend we were talking about the tying of the shoes and the lefts and rights with the family. And it's interesting because Bradley had a really hard time tying a shoe. And it was a big, he still gets insecure about it, when we talked about it. And he was able to tie, but it was not a great moment because they didn't know he was dyslexic at the time, him and his dad. I remember Montgomery being, and I think it was because Bradley was starting to do it. And so he was like, I'm going to do it. And he locked himself like literally in the basement with one of those books. And we went over it, I mean, a million times. And then he made Truman do it. I mean, Truman still remembers when Montgomery was like, you will learn to tie your shoes. And Truman was like, oh my God, taught him how to tie his shoes.
The CEO that I just had mentioned, the neighbor, he can now, but he's like, I worked hours. And that's what people don't understand. The trauma, the pressure, the PTSD of doing that because nobody else had to. Why am I that kid?
Thank you. That needs to be the clip, Audie. That needs to be the clip because that is exactly it. They don't see what goes on. The 504 today, everything went fine. But that was what I said. I said,
hang on a second. Before you jump in, I don't mean to jump off here. You rolled your eyes pretty good. So it went okay. It's okay. Good. There's a whole different program.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's fine. It is regions. Go ahead.
It doesn't, when it comes to 504 IP, it can't be just fine. It's got to be awesome. Because your kids, and this is for the listeners, right? Don't just say, it's fine because it's not fine long term. It could be fine, and right, it's just fine right now. But fine isn't good enough for long term for your kid because fine ends up being a train wreck.
Right. And I will preface why it's fine. It's the timing. So his regents in his AP classes. So that's like one of the teachers that was on. I said, I just want to clarify who had Montgomery in 10th grade. So I said, and they all had technical difficulties. So Dan and I were just kind of sitting, waiting for everyone. Yeah, the school couldn't get it on. It was kind of funny. And then they were walking around like in and out and they're like, can they hear us? It was hilarious. We were just sitting there. It's really funny. But so I was talking to the one teacher that had good, I was like, shouldn't everyone go where you are? Because you seem to have good Wi-Fi, but it's fine.
What?
So
were they at home?
No. And like our school district is everyone has computers. Everyone has a Mac.
So they couldn't get on? Oh, really?
Yeah.
But, convenient. And here's the thing. I don't mean to be an asshole, but this is the shit that goes on for them to delay processes and promote parents, right?
Yeah.
Right? Am I wrong?
No, you're not. I mean, we finished it, so it was good, but it was interesting. It was kind of funny. We wanted to get it in place. I took a long time after I got it to read it to edit. And then, so there was lag on our side. I mean, we did this in the beginning of the year and we're just doing it now. So there was lag on, it was really more on me. And I will say that because I wanted to edit, I needed to sit and read everything to make sure.
So in New York, how is it? So once you come to the school, they've got 90 days here in Illinois to respond.
Yeah, no, they've responded right away.
And to set this meeting up, because I know here, just about everybody that I've dealt with the 90, they'll take it right to the 80th, 9th day. Like they'll make sure they extend it because it's not about the kid.
Right. No, they did not do that. And I don't know if there's a law and I just was lucky. I don't know. Right. It also could be the timing because it was like they're doing like reviews of people's now. So it was like, oh, we can just fit them in. It could have been that as well. But the one thing is we wanted to get it in place for Truman's region exams. Now, I will say like right now, his grades are, I mean, he does well. We talked about that. He's a solid A, B student. However, what I was telling this one teacher, because it's for his AP class, he's like, he's such a delight. I love having him in AP. I think it's AP World. History is one of his really strong. Truman is really good in history, always has been, like retains all of that information. And like, he's always been, doesn't really have to study. It's a really good thing.
History's dumb.
He loves it. I shouldn't say he would be like, okay. When he was little, he loved it. But I said to the teacher, I know you might be like, and maybe you're not, but I'm going to tell you anyways, like interested. Truman is a good student, but like you guys don't understand what he's doing behind the scenes to become like, to be the good student. Now, I'm not saying, because I know Truman does not put a lot of extra, I shouldn't say that. He does a lot of work at school. He knows how to get his work done. He's not one that's like, I know students that will stay up till 4. We've talked to people with dyslexia. They're up at 4 a.m. because they needed it. That is not him. However, he does fairly well, but he does have to work. But he also knows now how to get around things. So my big thing was like, I don't want to put accommodations in place that are then going to screw up things that he's taught himself to then do well. So I was like, I want it to be, that's why it took me a little while. I was like, I want to read it. I don't want certain things in that you would do for a kid that was in second and third grade, like Montgomery had. Like that will screw him up. He'll be like, wait, what? I had like my system down. Like, we're not doing that. So one of the things is we wanted it for the regions test for him to be able to get extended time, even though he's like, I don't think I need that, but the different room, because in the regions, everyone is in, listen to this, they're in the auditorium or the cafeteria. So you have 60 or 70 or 80 or 100.
Shit in New York is fucking the dumbest thing ever. Anyway.
Dumbest thing ever. I get so angry with it, but you basically are doing it in a huge setting. So you're not in a little classroom. You're with like maybe hundreds or whatever it is. That in itself is super distracting, right? So Truman had asked, he's like, can we get accommodations for the regions? And I was like, yes. And then the SATs. Now, here's the thing, and I know you're going to have questions on this, but SATs and regions, your accommodations are determined by the College Board. It is a big organization. So like the College Board, people in Georgia.
Scam.
Yeah, totally. So the people in Georgia or any state, everyone has to go through the College Board to get their accommodations. They can turn people down if they don't like their thing. Now, locally, he can have his ACTs, he can have it, and the school can be the one that they can determine all of his other testing.
What other state has regions?
Just fucking New York.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan took regions and everyone, and they teach to the regions. So the entire, what you're learning is the whole year to be able to take this test at the end.
Right.
Like it's
Democratic
the dumbest.
state, New York sucks.
Dumb. It does suck. It does.
Illinois sucks.
Sucks.
Democrats running the education system sucks.
But it's really ridiculous. It really is, and it's really broken, and it doesn't make sense. And it's like they're teaching for this test, and they won't go off. So like you can't even ask a question about something because it's like, well, that's not on the region, so it doesn't matter. So like you're not learning. You're learning to take this test. So he wanted to be able to have accommodations. Now, you had to put them in January. So I was like, okay, well, wait a second.
January, February, March. Yeah, it's close.
Yeah. So they're like, it's out of our hands. And I was like, and Dan just looked at my face. I'm going to talk to Truman because if he's like, I'm thinking if I have to fight someone, but I don't know.
Again, always remembered everybody, going to play to your point is that everybody wants this done immediately. If you get your neuropsych, you're going in for a 504 IP. This is for the year. This is for like a year later.
Right. Right.
So this is
very good point.
For you
next
year. For Truman for next regions, not this year. You won't. So it's everybody wants this done right away. Absolutely, couldn't agree more. We want to get in and like sick. You want to get in the doctor now, right? 100%. But it doesn't work that way. You are basically trying to get this thing settled, taken care of for 1 year later.
Right, and senior year. He doesn't really have the same regions. Like this is the hard year, but again, it's also, I think we're fine. I also want it for college, right?
And which we talked about. That's the long picture, right?
That's the big picture. Yeah, exactly. So when I say it went fine, they're like, we'll do everything. I did add a couple things that because we are all, but here's the thing, regions this year is all their AP regions are all done on the computer. So there's no writing. Other years, it's all written and they won't even let you. So I'm like, okay, so maybe I don't need to fight too much because he's not typing. I mean, he's not.
And you're not going to get it this year.
I know.
You're not going, there's no sense of fighting, you're not going to get it this year. It's not going to make a difference because, what are we, we're May now, right? You're writing those things in a month. You're not getting it. So don't go and fight. You can go put your burly face on and go fight the bear, after drinking a bottle of wine like you tough girl, right? I
know where that was going.
But don't worry about, but
yeah.
Do we all want quicker? 100%. Is it bullshit? 150 million %.
Yeah.
But that's what we always talk about, is just have the understanding of where this is and how slow this process is. And nothing goes quickly. I always say it, if it happens quicker than a year, No. Fist pump.
Right. So when I say it went fine, it was fine. Like it is what it is. I will talk to him a little bit more because I did say, okay, if you can't give him the extended time, but can everything else, like all the preparation going up to the test. So like if he needs some of the extra, like, and so we have the notes, like she's like, does he need it before class? I was like, you know what? That's actually a great question. He might want it before, but he might want it after. So like, there's like silly things. And I'm like,
I always take it before.
That's what I said, right? Because he's going to want to look at it as the teacher, so he doesn't have to write.
You know, and then if he wants to write down something the way we write it down, right? He can add to that rather than the reverse.
Yeah, and that's what they're like. Well, all teachers usually put the notes on the computer, and so when he gets home, I'm going to be like, he wants it before, and you just said that because I said to them, I'm pretty sure it's going to be before, but.
And then, again, Lila, this is not how we do in college. I don't give a fuck how you do it. You do it to me.
Right. Exactly.
I'm on the fourth. I'm on the fourth floor in the basement right now. You're going to get me to the lobby floor.
Right.
That's not how I do it. I don't give a fuck how you do it. You don't live my life. You're going to get me up here.
Exactly. Yep. So it was fine. It was fine. But a couple things this weekend that were interesting that I think you're going to be really fascinated about. First of all, curiosity came up like 1,000 times because my whole family is a bunch of curious Georges. And so I was giggling at that. And my dad, 100%, my dad's always like, my dad was a person like, no questions, stupid, ask questions. My older sister, who is also dyslexic, she was remembering when she was in science because we were all talking about what I'm doing now. And they're like, this is so great. I was like, I know, remember I wasn't allowed to take chemistry because I was the dumb girl. And she said she'll never forget when she was asking, she's like, I was always so curious about it, but I didn't learn it the same way. And the teacher, she asked a question on cells. They were learning something. She raised her hand and the teacher did not know the answer. So the teacher basically told her it was a stupid question. And she's like, I shrunk. She goes, I never raised my hand again. She goes, and then I hate it.
I said that yesterday. Every teacher, there's no bad question until you're dyslexic.
Right. 1,000,000,000%. Exactly. Because then it's like, what? So I think my brother didn't know my story about my teacher calling me retarded. He's like, wait, why don't I know this? And I was like, I've told you a million times, you clearly weren't paying attention. But my older sister also was like, I don't know that I ever heard you say it. And I was like, I talk about it on the podcast in that group, and you guys, I know, are not listening to podcasts every time. But and they knew the teacher. And my sister Elizabeth goes, I would have shrunk. And I said, I know, but that was the difference of I got up, called her a bitch and ran out, even though I knew that was wrong, but I like stood up for myself. So then we started talking more about, we were asking my dad questions. So we were like, everyone was asking, we did a living eulogy for anyone that's like, so it was my dad's 80th. And so it was very, very emotional, but really beautiful. But we asked so many different questions, but some of them were about my dad and his dyslexia. And he wasn't diagnosed until later because he didn't know, right? It was until we all really, and our kids got diagnosed.
Well, 60% of us never find out. We find out through our kids, right? That way, especially now with that generation and our generation, 60% of us find out that way.
Exactly. And his brother went to Yale. Right, so very, very smart. And his brother also went to boarding school. So he went to the Hill School in New Jersey. Very, very smart. So we were saying to my dad, like, did you ever feel dumb? And he's like, I never felt dumb because I always knew I knew more. So this is like, I was like fascinated. I was like, no, so I felt dumb. I was like, this is so interesting. He's like, no, they always would say like, oh, you're Donald's brother. Oh, you have to figure it out what's going on. Right. So like, but his mom was his cheerleader. He also did work with his dad. So his dad now, which I didn't realize, was the one that was ADHD. So, cause we were like, did uncle, did Pop-Up ever like yell at you? And we remember when he was dying, he told my dad to shut up, and we were all standing there and we were all like, oh my God, like that's uncomfortable. We're like, just shut up, Mark. And it was like, oh, like, and my dad like laughed and whatever. And it was like uncomfortable. So we were asking more about their relationship. Like, did pop-up ever make you feel? And he's like, no, he's like, it's really interesting. No one ever really made me feel dumb. He's like, it was kind of like, I knew I struggled, but I like, I failed this, I failed that, but it was kind of like, all right, well, I'm good at these other things. And so I just kind of went along we were like kind of this innate confidence. And I was like, so I know your mom gave you, but what are you shaking your head no for?
Go ahead.
So, he was like, it's really interesting. He's like, I never felt less than. He's like, there's times where I remember struggling and maybe being frustrated. He's like, but I really, even in like, working with different realtors, because he was always the one that had like the new tech. He was Mr. Gadget. My dad's Mr. Gadget. He has every new thing. Like that's his thing. But he said a lot of times when he was running, like when he was running his real estate agent, or when then he was working and he was managing was really tough for him because no one could keep up. Everyone would be like, wait, we just learned this thing. And he's like, yep, there's something new and better. But his dad, because him and his dad worked together, they had a real estate company and his dad had the insurance side of the company. But one of the things that ended up not working out is my dad wasn't doing any of the paperwork, but my grandfather never knew, right? He never knew because he was like, wow, you're a whiz at selling. My dad could sell anything. So he would sell, but then there was no paperwork going. And so it ended up like, not being the best thing, obviously.
That paperwork. But you started the first thing. My mom was my cheerleader. That's everything.
Right.
That's you and your ornate confidence. That made that ornate confidence, because that's exactly how you started it. That's how he started it. If he doesn't have that, you don't get that ornate confidence in my mind.
Right. And because my grandmother was named Vivian. And so my stepmom was like, thank God for Vivian. And she was like my dad. I mean, both of my dad's, my uncle and my aunt both got their law degrees because my grandfather was like, that's what you're going to do. You're going to get your law degrees. And they were like, well, did they ever? He's like, no one ever said I have to get my law degree. Like, it was just like, well, Mark's Mark. That's what it was always said. Well, Mark's Mark. Mark's doing his thing. Mark's doing things. So it was never looked down. But so we were like, Elizabeth's like, I remember feeling really dumb in school and feeling dumb. I mean, she had to work through a lot of stuff when she went back to school to get her degree. I think it was in her 40s, she went back and got her degree because now what she does is she runs she is really big in the adult memory care world. So she had to go back and I think she even had to get her master's. And I was like, oh my God, she went and she was taking that biology and she goes, oh my God, I'm going to learn about the cells. She went to YouTube and learned about the questions she had. And she was like, oh my God, science makes sense now. And I was like, how pissed were you though that you're like, and she goes, I mean, I wasn't, but I was like, it's like, this is so crazy that it took me to learn myself because the teacher didn't know the answer. And I was like, there were so many times that I got shot down and was like, I'm not raising my hand anymore, but I don't understand what the fuck's going on.
I don't know if the teacher didn't know the answer or didn't understand the question.
Good. Right.
Because there's so many times that I say something like this, like, I don't understand what you're asking me.
Right.
What are you at? Right. So I don't, again, it's the way we're so different. Our brains are so different. I don't think the teacher didn't know that answer because you're talking about a specific, what they were learning at that point in time.
The cells,
was probably how she asked that question didn't make sense to the teacher.
Could have been.
And then teacher flip it back on her, right? Because why? You made me look stupid.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Exactly. And so it was really interesting hearing my dad though be like, no, I really never felt dumb. But my dad also is the guy that always knows everything. Like he has all the tidbits. He knows, like, he's like you, where he, like, you can ask him anything and he'll either research it or figure it out. So he would always give you these tidbits and know, like, I know this and that. So it was more of a wealth of knowledge, but your computer is going to die. So we
got 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, perfect. But I thought it was really, there was a couple different times where, like, when we were talking about the dyslexia and how interesting it is and ADHD and how different our brains work. And then his wife, who is not at all, like, so she was like, it's so interesting. I love being around you guys because of the patterns, how you talk and the energy, how you talk. And we're all, I actually which my siblings were like, you've gotten really, really good at listening and then directing the conversations. And I was like, thank you for noticing. I have.
Let me pat myself on the back.
I did. I was
Good
really
job,
proud
self.
because we all are big personalities and everyone interrupts each other. I mean, growing up, it was like everyone. And then my older sister would retreat because she'd be like, I don't feel like trying to butt in. My brother would sometimes take a back seat. And then the rest of us would be like talking over each other. And now it's not, because it's like you can be seen and heard, but it's also, we were talking about the interrupting with attention deficit brains. So, because my brother was also saying like his kids now, like, how did you, I said, I'm very conscious of interrupting because of when growing up in our house, sometimes my mom's a little bit of an interrupter, but like it's a very, it sometimes you don't know. And I remember talking to my dad about this when I don't know if I was in college or when, but it's like have something next to you and jot down the word so you don't forget it, but then continue listening, right?
But you got
Until
all the understanding now to be
right.
able to recognize that. And I think that's the biggest thing is that, you maybe in college you noticed that, but you've got so much more understanding about dyslexia, ADHD, and yourself makes
Yep.
it easier to not interrupt.
Yeah. Right. No, it's very cool. So that was very emotional weekend.
Can I ask who decided to go with the eulogy?
Yeah. So we kept kind of back and forth. So my, Cindy, who's my dad's wife, was like, your dad doesn't really want an 80th birthday, but I thought it would be really great that we like wrote like a nice letter. You know, everyone does eulogies when the person's dead, but it'd be really nice for him to hear. And then my older sister was like, why don't we all get together and then and her, so it was kind of both of theirs, but it was because people were asking, was it your dad's? And I'm like, I'm sure it was.
Elizabeth and I are like, what? Where did this come from? This is out of not left field, right field, center field, all fields.
Yeah. But it was all of us like telling my dad what he meant, like in all of our memories. And, my parents are divorced. And so it was also like, it was I learned some stuff that I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm learning this at 50. Okay. So it was good.
You never stop learning.
I never stop learning. Never. And evolving, right? And we're all evolving and we're supposed to evolve because we're doing big things.
I hope you're evolving, meaning, as a world, if you don't evolve as a person, as an individual, as a woman, as a man, as a husband, as a wife, as a cousin, if you don't continue to evolve, you don't continue to live, and you don't continue to be a good person.
It's 100% true.
Is it easy? Hell no. It fucking
so
sucks.
Tiring. I'm like, I'm so exhausted from evolving. Can I just be here for a little bit? I've learned so much. Can I just stay here? I don't need to evolve anymore. Just give me I can evolve in like a month. Give me like a time to fucking breathe. Oh my gosh. All right. I think that's it, right? It was good. That was kind of a good download. It was it's been heavy, but good. Yeah. I mean, like it's getting closer and closer to what is happening in so many different things and so many different avenues, and especially with the foundation. I mean, so many beautiful things are coming out.
Yeah, no, it was can't change the past or the future, only the now.
Look at you, philosopher. Thank you again for joining dyslexia, word blindness, dyslexia exposed. You guys, I say it every time, like, rate, review, and share, and go to the SOPL Foundation. There's going to be some really awesome things with some events that are coming up. You guys want to know how to get involved, sopelfoundation.org. Thanks again.